Hey guys, this is Coach JT here with Pack Baseball Softball Academy. We got special guest Coach Todd Cabrera on with us inside the dugout today, and we're looking forward to an exciting day. Coach Todd he's currently living in Casper, Wyoming. He's actually from Montana. He can talk to you about that, but he's got a lot of things going on. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today and really see where this goes. So why don't you start by introducing who you are? Make sure you mention all those things you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, like I said, Coach Cabrera or Coach Todd, either one. I am super excited to be here. It's been a while since I've been on a podcast, so this is pretty fun. I am from Montana, a small town, Butte, Montana, or in that town they like to call it Butte, America. They have a strong belief they're the only town out there. But yeah, just a small mining town, 30,000 people, just really tight knit community, sports community. Just awesome place really to grow up, but a very tough place. I ended up actually growing up in foster care system and bounced in and out of group homes and foster homes growing up, but always stayed in Butte. And so it was nice, I didn't have to leave my friend group or the people that I grew up knowing, and graduated high school there and then moved out to Coos Bay, Oregon, and played college baseball out there, and then back to Montana to finish playing college baseball. So kind of all over up in that area. And yeah, I run my own apparel company. I coach girls fast pitch, 18U baseball. Right now, I'm coaching a 9U travel team and an 18U travel team at the same time, as well as coaching youth wrestling, which is quite the juggling act, trying to get from everything and home at a decent time. But it keeps me on my toes, so I like it. So it's been fun. And then at the same time, I have my own apparel company, Six Tool Apparel, where we try to make affordable apparel for teams and programs and kids. A big philosophy of ours is we really don't want to have super expensive apparel. We want great quality, but affordability, because we want all kids to feel included no matter what their social status is or financials. So we try to do our best to make everything affordable so that kids aren't being left out. And that's kind of one thing that we keep at the forefront. There's, how do we bring quality at an affordable price? So that's been a really fun journey, leads to late nights. And right now we just kind of run it, me and my wife run it out of our house, and it's been good, but it's definitely been a big learning curve, and really enjoy it. So
Yeah,
yeah.
well, that's a mouthful for sure, Coach. So on top of that, we had talked, and in the group, you had mentioned that you do some mental performance coaching. And I know you coach wrestling, you coach baseball, and now you coach softball. And I'm assuming there's a lot of similarities there in terms of the mental part. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think probably, I would say like 5 years ago, we would kind of get kids in and out of here that the talent was there, the work ethic was there, but we were always just kind of missing that one piece. And it always came back to that mental side of the game. And I've always been really intrigued with it as an athlete, just even being a college athlete myself, just pressure, like, why is this happening to me in these moments? Like, even though I think as an athlete, you're making the moment bigger than what it is, but at the end of the day, it happens to even the best. And so I was really intrigued to kind of do a deep dive into that and figure it out. And I had followed Brian Kane. He's a mental performance coach for a lot of just top tier athletes and programs across the country. And the more I started following him, I decided to jump in, and he has his own mental performance school that he puts on. And so I took a dive into that and started learning, and went and got certified in mental performance. And then we really started hammering it with our athletes. As soon as I had finished that, the first thing that I kind of attacked was creating a mindset journal for my players, so that they kind of had checklists that they could go through and just kind of really document the work that they had been doing. They could put their goals down on paper and they could look back at them on a week to week basis and just see it, did I get there this week? And if I didn't, how do I get there the next week? And just kind of really give them a foundation to conquering a lot of the mental game. And the more we started pushing the mental aspect across to like my high school baseball players and even my younger kids, like I see it with my own daughter, like when she approaches the plate before she steps in the box, you can see her take a really deep, intentional breath before she steps in and she lets it out. And then I can just see that like she is locked in and ready to go. And she's been I've pretty much brought her everywhere with me since she's been old enough to walk. And so she gets that mental side of the game that we're coaching to our athletes all the time. But then I see her put it into play and I'm like, man, I wish I would have had that when I was her age, and because she's playing boys baseball right now. She was on, as a 7-year old was on an 8U travel team, as an 8-year old on a 9U travel team. And she was their starting catcher. And then it just, and she was putting up good numbers and being successful, but I see how she deals with pressure and adversity and just polar opposite how I would have dealt with it at that age. And so I see that it works. And then with our high school players, the more we pushed it and the more we got them kind of workshopping and going through the mental side of the game and just having real conversations with them, that the more I started to see their numbers rising, our batting averages started going up, our fielding percentages were going up. And then I was like, man, this has been the piece. And now we have to figure out how to really attack this piece of the puzzle and help these kids get to where they want to go. Because I think at the end of the day, a lot of it doesn't come down to, talent's a big part of it, but work ethic is huge. And a lot of kids quit because they have a mental struggle and a block that they don't think they can get any better. And so if we could help break down that mental barrier for them, to me, the possibilities are endless for these athletes.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And talk about that. So your daughter's playing ball. Just a little bit about us. So at PAC, we have collegiate level teams, and we have actually adult baseball teams, and we have baseball, softball, travel comp teams. And on one of my adult teams, the 25 and over Wolfpack, I had drafted a lefty female baseball player, and she went to the University of Texas. She didn't play for whatever reason. She's a stud, but I drafted her and she played for us last season, and she was asking me for some off-season help and coaching and whatnot, and we did all that. Well, long story short, she went in October to the first ever women's baseball draft. She went to the tryouts back in, I think they were in July, and she made it in the draft. And she was drafted by the new LA team. So she is in the first women's professional Major League Baseball league.
Wow, that's awesome.
And she'll be playing for the Dodgers organization. It's probably not called the Dodgers. But they're in contract negotiations right now. But I think that's great. I think that's awesome. And then one of the guys that I play with on one of my teams and coach with, Mark Stout, is the sideline reporter for the Colorado Rockies. And he recommended this documentary called See Her, Beat Her. And it follows the USA women's baseball team and their competition for the World Cup and everything and their dominance. And it follows a couple other teams at the same time. And it's just, for anybody who has a daughter, and I have 3 daughters, it's an amazing, it's like a woman power. Like it's a really great story. And I think any woman should, or any coach should go out and see it. It's pretty fantastic. And I think it's just on Prime or something, but
Right.
That stuff is really, really cool to me. And the mental part of it is so key. My new book that'll be coming out in a couple months here is called The Psychology of Hitting. And I wrote this book and I gave it out to some of my coaches and friends, and Mark Stout was one of those guys, and Frank Gonzalez of the Rockies, and I said, check this out, tell me what you think. And they're like, it's absolutely right, JT, but you need to like summarize the psychology part of this. You need to kind of explain maybe a little subtext at the end of the chapter that says why these things work. I mean, we know they work because, we're in baseball. We know they work. Why do they work? And I thought, well, that's a great idea. So I wrote them all out. And then my daughter is in pre-med over at the University of Denver, and she's in her fourth year over there, and she made an introduction for me to their psychology department. And the head of psychology is now reviewing that book to sort of put his stamp of approval and maybe come on as a co-author. But that's kind of a long story that isn't very short. But the idea is if you can wrap your head around how to guide these kids mentally through those things, most of the time, whatever they're thinking is keeping them from moving on is not even real.
Yeah. No, absolutely. No, and I think that's a big part of it. And um kind of with the six tool stuff, we go around and I've been blessed enough to go put on some baseball clinics and do some mental talks with kids, and at the end of every clinic that we do, and I would team up a lot with a company out of Arizona called Major League University, and that's ran by one of my good buddies, Austin Byler. He Nevada Wolfpack alum. He's just a really great, genuine dude. He got drafted to the Diamondbacks as a first baseman, but he's a Hall of Famer for the Wolfpack, and just awesome guy, just really genuine. And he kind of got me started in that space. And so, in just going around and doing mental training clinics with kids, and we would, throw in some skill stuff in between, and then break down at the end and just really go over just intentional breathing, talking about just meditation and things that, kind of play into success of athletes. And it kind of blew up, and it was pretty fun. We had some really good clinics where we'd have 140, 150 baseball players, and so we were teaming up here in Wyoming and just kind of going around doing it. And we have a plan to team up again. He's going to fly up here and maybe just run a short circuit where we go around and do some camps in the summertime, pick some spots, and go do some of the training. And we in the past try to bring in, we brought in Bryce Weedman. He was a pitcher for the Pirates organization, but I played college baseball with him out in Coos Bay, Oregon, for Southwestern Oregon. And just really good, genuine people and just have a team to go out there and really try to, hopefully, you're not going to reach every kid. But if you get a few of them, I think you're doing, what you set out to do. And I think just going in really just to the pressure side of things, when we look at athletes and hitting and overcoming pressure, I mean, to me, the biggest thing about pressure is, I see a lot of coaches that kind of coach that pressure isn't real. And it's, to me, like when you tell a kid that, it's like, they're probably in their head going, yeah, right. Like I feel it every day. And they're right. I mean, it is obviously real. It's how do we manage it? That's the biggest thing. It's not that pressure isn't real. It's that, hey, pressure can be managed. And to me, it starts with preparation, right? I mean, if pressure fades when preparation shows up, and that's the biggest thing for me that I push with my athletes is, like, every day we wake up and we have what I tell my players is the 2 C's. We have chances and we have choices. And it's, do you want to take the chance that you're going to get better today, or do you want to make the choice that you're going to get better? And because the kids that are leaving it up for chance are those kids that we kind of see that ride on talent. And it's the kids that keep making the choice to show up, to stay late, show up early and put in the work, that end up passing talent eventually. It might not be right away, but eventually they do pass it. And so for me, the big thing is kids don't rise to the moment. they rise to, like, they fall back on their habits. So when pressure starts to mount, kids fall back on whatever habits they had, and good or bad. And unfortunately, that's what ends up winning is those habits. And so if we're in here as coaches and parents and we're creating a healthy culture of creating great habits, then what we're going to see is pressure kind of starts to fade out. And that, I mean, it doesn't mean that it's going to completely leave, but we're going to see that our kids start overcoming it more and more, and that we push these good habits, and that getting kids making the right choices. So, and I think that's um a big thing for me is, like, what's the culture like? How are we creating standards for these kids to meet? And are we moving them through like a healthy goal process, like making sure that these goals aren't, I mean, there's nothing wrong with having big goals, but sometimes we let our kids or our athletes set these goals, and there's so many steps to get there that the goal seems so far away. And that's where we start to kind of see them fade out and lose interest, because we didn't rein their goals in a little bit and then help them work towards them, those smaller goals, to get towards that bigger goal. And, so for me, like, the biggest thing is just that delayed gratification, right? If, I keep showing up and putting in the work, I can't always get a high five just because I showed up to practice today. That's an expectation, right? That's the standard, is that you show up to practice and you put in the work. But the thank you, and the high five is going to come when you stay after practice and put in more work, and when you show up early. But it can't be an expectation. And I think that's sometimes where, like, even as a parent or as a coach, I'm not always going to pass out high fives like, cool, you're at practice today, I'm glad, but you're supposed to be here. So that's the standard we have set for you. It's when you start showing up without me having to provoke you to be there, or having to kind of say, hey, I'm going to stay after. You want to stay? Like, I want you to come up to me and say, hey, coach, you got 15 minutes today that I could stay after and get some extra reps, or you come engage in that conversation to get better. And that's where those high fives and that gratification is going to come from. But there's so many times now, and I like see it with kids, that we have given them that instant gratification culture where we're passing out high fives for just doing what's expected, and then they can't handle the failure when it does come. And and I think it's hard too, because as parents we see the work they're putting in, nobody else does. And so when something doesn't go their way, we understand why it's upsetting, but and other people don't. But at the end of the day, if we just keep handing out these high fives for the standard, then we're just going to keep falling into this, to me, like a black hole of failure, where these kids just keep failing and they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, and you touched on a number of super sensitive subjects these days, and attention span is like number one, right? Because on TikTok and Snapchat, if you don't respond, it just goes away, right?
Yeah.
But once you respond, it goes away. I'm actually never been on Snapchat, but I hear that's how it works. But then
Right.
there's TikTok and everything, and you get this instant gratification. And I was just on here the other day with a strength and conditioning coach, and he talks about long-term athletic development. All of those words are probably the most boring words to an athlete right now, because they're like, "What? You mean it's going to take me more than today to be an all-star?"
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and it is hard, and I see it all the time. I mean, it's kids are having a harder and harder time handling failure. And I mean, a lot of it is they're just overstimulated. Social media kind of pushes this false narrative to them. And it's just, kids don't really have to live in the same reality that we probably had to live in when we were growing up, where I couldn't just open my phone and zone out. Well, dad's letting us have it in the car because, we watched strike three to end the game, or whatever. I mean, so they really do just they don't live in the same reality, and obviously social media doesn't help. And um there's kind of they the stories you see are more of the success stories, but they're not really, the failures aren't pushed as much anymore. And so really they're just seeing all these people winning and having success, but what's left out is, well, how did those people get there? And, unfortunately, that's the side we need to see more, is that, it took some significant failure for a lot of these athletes to get to where they're at. But the kids don't get to see that because it's just success. So they think that's how it should be for them. And it's just, obviously that's not the case, and it's not ideal for them. And so even, with my kids, my daughter, for instance, I mean, she loves wrestling. And girls wrestling right now is like one of the fastest growing sports in the country. Now that it's kind of starting to get sanctioned all over the US. And now it's in colleges more. And so she really loves wrestling, which caught me off guard, like, because she's always grown up around baseball. And I wrestled growing up. And then actually, when I got done playing college baseball, I jumped into the back into training, and I started doing jujitsu, which then led me down this MMA path. And I competed in mixed martial arts for a while, and did cage fighting and stuff, and just trying to, after baseball, to find that competitiveness again, because you know, it's really hard to flip that switch as a competitor when you're done. And unfortunately, kind of where we're at, adult baseball leagues don't really exist, so you can't go do anything like that. So just missing competition and competing, that was kind of the route. I was like, well, I always was good at wrestling and I love wrestling. So let's, jump into that world and see what it's about. And it was fun, and I enjoyed it. But, um, one day I picked my daughter up from school, and I was like, we can't just play baseball. You need to pick another sport, because I'm a big believer in multi-sport athletes, and that, we need to play as many sports as we can for as long as we can, until it kind of gets down to where we do have to pick, one or two sports, and eventually one. And she was like, she looked at me and she goes, why? I play baseball. And I was like, no, I was like, we're going to play more sports, because we need to be athletic. We need to learn to be explosive from different positions. And she goes, fine, Dad, I want to wrestle. And I was like, perfect. And that was something we grew up doing. I had a foster family that were just diehard wrestlers. And so we wrestled whether we wanted to or not. They were going to sign us up for a wrestling tournament. So that's what we did. And I enjoyed it. And just even the mental side of it, like, was huge for me. Just the one-on-one, really nobody to blame but myself. So that was just, that aspect was huge for me. But she had this girl that she would run into last year, and she's 100 times more athletic than I was her age. And her mom was a college volleyball player and stuff. So that, she inherited some good genes from her mom. And so she found a lot of success last year in her first year, but there was one girl who pinned her. They wrestled 3 times. That girl pinned her every time in the first period. And my daughter, this summer, our club decided, hey, we're gonna do preseason wrestling work, and it's 5 days a week. And so she was every day like, Dad, I want to go to wrestling. I want to go to wrestling. And she just has this killer work ethic for a 9-year-old. And one thing that I really try to do as a dad is not push things on them. And I want it to be their choice. And I mean, there's days where I would come home just beat from work and everything, because we're always on the go. And I'd be like, hey, you want to just stay home tonight? And she'd be like, no. She'd be like, you can just drop me off and leave. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that, so, because our house is kind of a little out of town. So I was like, well, looks like we're going to wrestling. And so she just really um busted it this year. And then we had our first tournament last week, and there was all 3 different styles of wrestling. And she happened to have this girl in her weight again this year, and they met 3 times in the championship. And that girl ended up beating her, but they went the distance every time, and it came down to a decision by points. And her last match, she ended up losing 8-10, and she came off the mat and she was crying. And I really try, to push to them like, hey, let's not cry. Like, we don't want our opponents ever to see us, down. We don't want them to ever know they got to us. And so, she's got tears rolling down her eye, and I'm telling her like, this girl pinned you 3 times last year, probably in the first minute of the first period, and you just went all 3 rounds with her. And I was like, if that's not just a testament to the work you've put in and, the growth that you've had, then I was like, I don't know what is. And I think, as a dad, I'm just like, even though she lost, I'm just ecstatic because I'm like, wow, like it's so impressive to see that turnaround. And then for her, she's just absolutely defeated. And you're trying to shed the light on the positive, but obviously as a kid, they don't see that part of it. And again, that girl came up and she uh, goes up to Finley and she says, hey, Finley, like, I just want you to know you're the best wrestler that I've ever wrestled. And so right there, it kind of just was that aha moment that, you're there, the work's paying off. And to me, it's like just the prime definition of that delayed gratification. It's like this girl, like, she almost had her beat the last match. She just had a flipper and she had like 14 seconds to get the turn to get the points and never got it. But it was just a really cool moment. And then, for her, I think it just shows, when we went home, it's, you know, she goes, Dad, are you proud of me? And I was like, you know, yeah, I'm always proud of you, but you should be proud of yourself. And I think that's what I want my kids and my athletes to chase more of is, hey, you should be proud of yourself. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm proud of you because one day I'm not always going to be around to be proud of you. Like, I'm your dad, I'm always going to be proud, or I'm your coach, I'm going to be proud, especially when we're making strides in the right direction. But it's like teaching these kids to be proud of themselves, I guess, is where I'm going with that. And so like that's been a big thing. And I actually I was reading a psychology article where a psychologist was kind of talking about that our kids, like, they become so dependent on us because they are looking for that. Are you proud of me, mom? Are you proud of me, dad? Are you proud of me, coach? And it's like, no, we got to start teaching them to be proud of themselves because one day we're not going to be their coach anymore. And one day, unfortunately, they're going to have to live their lives without us and go out into the world. And, so like we've got to teach them to be proud of themselves. And, and that's to me, like a really big thing that I have really put a lot of focus into this year as a coach and as a dad is that I want them to really be aware of the work they've put in and them to know it's okay to be proud of yourself, you know? And so that's been a big one, for me this year and a huge kind of play into that delayed gratification for me.
I love that. I love that. I think that's great. And anybody listening to this should really let those words sink in because definitely that is absolutely the truth. When I wrote my first book, Coaching the Home Team, it was really about taking the coaching philosophy that I use on the field into the house and sort of guiding your kids through life while they're in the safety of your home, right? They're not always going to be there. But that's part of that process is teaching them to be, I didn't say it like that, but to be proud of themselves. I think that's a great way to say it and to understand that they are worthy and that everything they do matters.
Right.
And I love that.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, as a coach, just and having a program myself and really like, our program name is Valor. And like the big thing for me is kind of how we came about was there was another travel ball program in town and I had just kind of moved to town. So it was really, trying to figure out kind of the dynamics of living here. I had taken a little bit of time away from baseball after I got done with playing baseball, trying to kind of figure out who I am outside of baseball because For me, all my eggs were always in the baseball basket, and I never really took any time to figure out, you know, I guess in my mind, I never wanted it to come to an end, and I didn't think it would. And then when it did, I really kind of had to take a mental break from it because I had really never put any thought into who I was going to be after baseball. And so a little bit, and I think every baseball player gets that way when it comes to an end. You have a little, even though it's been something you loved for so long, you have like a bitterness at the end and where you're like, man, why did you do this to me? And it's, um, so it took me some time. So I took a little break from the game and, you know, just kind of went to work, tried to figure out, where I was going to fit in a new community and a new place and really figure out the dynamic. And finally had enough people bugging me about baseball and like, hey, you come to our practice, you'd come to our practice. And I was like, held them off for probably about a year. And then I was finally like, all right, I'll come to one practice. I'll see what's going on. And, and then I had kind of learned that for this team I had went and helped, they were just kind of a bunch of 8-year-olds that had been cut from the other travel ball program in town. And then I was like, wait a minute. I was like, we're cutting 8-year-olds. And so then for me, I was like, this is crazy to me. And um, so I was like, man, I trying to at that moment reflect back on my baseball journey and I'm like, I might have got cut when I was 8. I don't know. And and it's just a long time ago, but I'm like, I'm glad I didn't get cut, but we didn't really have travel ball. We played city league ball and then where I'm from, you go to Legion and then after city league, you can try out for all stars and go play all stars and then, kind of go that route. So what I did is I was like, you know what? We're going to take those 8-year-olds and we're going to put them on a travel team. We're going to give them an opportunity to play travel ball. And as coaches, I was like, we don't need the most talented kids. We just need kids that want to work hard because we can develop them. I was like, talent can be developed. And so I kind of got the guy who's the vice president for my program now. And I was like, hey, we could really do this thing, but we got to stick to what our values are going to be. And our first one's going to be development. Like we can develop baseball players. And, for me, I was like, a big part of that was when I got to high school, I had been a catcher my whole life. And then they moved me to outfield. They're like, you're too fast. You need to be in the outfield. This is where you're going to go. And then I got moved to outfield. And then my freshman year in baseball, I was absolutely atrocious as an outfielder. Like it was embarrassing. I couldn't read a fly ball to save my life. And I'm like, this should be like very easy. And I mean, to this day, like the first fly ball ever hit to me in a game, like still haunts me because I'm thinking I'm camped under it. It goes right over my head. And I was like, oh, well, this is absolutely embarrassing. And so, and that's where like the real work started for me. And at the time, as an athlete, I'm like, why are they doing this to me? And like they know I'm a catcher. The coaches have seen me catch since I've been a little kid, so they know that's my primary position. And then, so I was like, as a freshman, I was kind of very bitter about getting moved to the outfield. I didn't understand it. I think a little bit I didn't want to understand it because I wanted to be our catcher. Hold on, buddy. And so then finally I had this moment that I finally realized I was like, I'm not moving. Like I'm not going to get my way. It doesn't matter. Like I'm stuck. So now I have a choice. I can get really good in the outfield or I'm going to be sitting on the bench for the next 3 years, not playing the sport I love. And so then, to me, I took it as a challenge. So, from my coach, I was like, well, since you're going to move me out here, you're going to stay with me every day after practice and show up early. You're going to hit me fly balls until I'm better at outfield. And then, you know, just accepting that challenge. And he did. I mean, I happen to have a really awesome coach at that time. And me and his son were best friends growing up too. So that helped because we spent a lot of time together. But but he really was just kind of probably one of the bigger influences in my life. Then, when I look back on it, I went from being a nobody in the outfield as a freshman to the next year I was all conference, and then ended up in college being a defensive player of the year as a center fielder. And I was like, wow, this guy like completely changed the trajectory of my baseball career. And at the time I didn't understand it, but by the time that I was done, I did. And, he was that guy that he was going to give every kid a chance. Like, and we're going to develop, like we can develop, but it's up to you. And so that played the biggest part in we're going to develop these 8-year-olds. We're going to let them play travel ball and we're going to keep going. And then we did. And then we got some traction. We went from one team to two teams to five teams. Then next thing you know, we had 12 teams. And then we have a high school program, which really was never kind of in the cards for us. We planned to kind of shuffle kids to Legion. And then the other travel program had absorbed the Legion program. And so then we were like, oh, well, so then, ultimately you're like, well, are the kids going to get a fair shake that come out of this program compared to the kids that have already been in the other travel program who now controls the Legion? And so we just, told the kids like, hey, you can play baseball here. You can go to Legion. All we care about is that you're playing baseball. And so like we've actually, had the opportunity to have high school baseball. I think this is our 5th year now of having 18, an 18U program. We've signed every kid that has played baseball for us, on to the next level. And kind of one of our like really big successes, like in that, staying true to development, was we had a kid that showed up when he was 16 and had never played baseball before. And we get done with tryouts and the coaches go, there you go, Todd. Well, what are you going to do with that kid? And I said, I think I'm going to keep him. And they're like, no, you're not. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, why not? Like, what do we have to lose? I was like, let's just sit him down. Let's have a real conversation with him. Tell him where he's at. I was like, he can either accept it or not, and then just give him a game plan to where he wants to go. And so, we have that conversation. This kid ends up hitting like 200 his first year, not just struggling, but then all of a sudden something clicks for him. And it's like every day I drive past the facility on the way to work and his car is there in the morning. And then I drive past it to go get my daughter from school and his car's out front after school. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so he's in here working and he's putting in the work and he's really bought into this game plan. So then we get through the winter time and we come out, to the next summer. And this kid is now, I've named him a starter on our team. And he goes to from hitting 200 to hitting 420. And so it's just like it all like clicked for this kid. And I was like, well, right there. Like that is like if we stay true to our values and we guide these kids how we should, I was like, that's testament. Well, that next thing you know, this kid goes and plays college baseball. And so a kid that starts playing baseball when he's 16, and I'm not saying that's going to happen for every 16-year-old or be the case for them all, but if we can get these kids to buy in and trust the process that we are selling, and then I was like, it can happen. And I'm more of what I call myself a project coach. Like I like the projects. I want the kids that people don't think that you could do anything with, because I look back and I was like, man, I might have been that kid, and then
It could have been me that got cut
yeah,
at that age.
right. And yeah, so it's tough. And then for me, like growing up in foster care, I was like, the best part of my day was walking through the doors into the baseball practice. I was like, and I'd way rather at the end of the day be able to give that to kids than to say that we went out and won 100 games this year. Like, and that's really it for me, is that I want to give kids opportunities. And at the end of the day, like these kids might not be all stars and they might not go play college sports, but we gave them a safe place to develop. We gave them a place that felt like a home, and we were there to kind of guide them in the right direction.
I love that. I love that. And we're getting near the end of our time, Coach. But what I want you to talk about now is tell us a little bit about your organization, what you got going on there. I know do you do full uniforms or is it like the apparel part of your Six Tool brand? Tell me a little bit more about that before we let you go.
Just more about Six Tool Apparel
Yeah,
or the baseball program.
in the whole thing. So you're in a facility, right? So you got a facility.
Yep. So we have a 13,000 square foot indoor training facility. It's got 3 drop down cages, and then you can raise them up into the ceiling to open up the whole facility. We've got probably 18 feet of whiteboard space that we use, where we will sit players down. Um, we'll go through situational stuff. We have a board where I have mental performance stuff wrote down. We kind of have like our preparatory skills that our players got to have to making sure they're prepared for the physical and mental side of the game, like we do. And it's their job to come in every day, look at that board, and we'll have new stuff on there. We kind of have drills. We do kind of a thing that we called Living Life Valor. And it's kind of where we set that standards for the culture that we want to create. And kind of what that looks like is just every day, like at the end of practice, I'll ask kids if they're living Valor above the line. And above the line for us means, are you meeting the standards that we set down, or we set as a program, and that you set for yourself? And or are you living Valor below the line, which means you're coming up short, like we're not going to class, we're not getting our assignments turned in, we're not having strong character this week or whatever. The big thing for us is, are you bringing the juice today to practice? Did you bring the juice for somebody, or to the team today? And then with the apparel side of it, really, all of our kids, we do full uniforms. They get 2 sets of uniforms. They get a bat bag, a helmet. They get, pullovers. Kind of, we give them the kind of the whole treatment as far as stuff gear they get, and try to really make them feel like they're part of something. Just kind of look good, feel good, play good, hopefully. Yeah, no, and on the apparel side, like we do, all the Six Tool does all the uniform packages, and I just discount them so pretty much Valor gets the uniforms at cost. And then, which was huge for us because we had to save money, and that was the biggest thing, is the more money we're saving as a program, as like I'm saving money, then our kids have better opportunities. Like we take our high school boys to Omaha every summer for the College World Series. We've taken our girls softball program down to Norman, Oklahoma for the Women's College World Series. So really just trying to provide kids, a big opportunity, and let them, go out and play in fun tournaments, and try to give them the biggest bang for their buck. We actually have, we have a commitment fee that we charge. So we charge a $250 commitment fee, and then the rest of their fees are fundraised. So we actually have no fees. We fundraise all of their money for these kids to play, and which has been huge. And that was my way of making sure that every kid had the opportunity to play. And because we have a super easy fundraising structure that we have had set in place now for 12 years, and it works amazing. And then it really just gives every kid that opportunity, because not every parent can just write a check, and so that's been a huge benefit to us, because we get kids that come play baseball that normally couldn't afford it, and if we didn't do that, wouldn't be playing baseball. So we do like cool incentive programs with their fundraising, where they can earn like a custom glove, a custom bat. They can earn all sorts of gear and stuff for the game, and we have tons of kids that hit those incentives and pretty much have all their gear paid for. And so we try to do a lot of cool stuff for the kids, as far as like the culture, that we're trying to create, that We just want high character, right? And I mean, that's the biggest thing for us. Like we're not here to make, kids feel less than. We want kids with great character because at the end of the day, like when they leave here, that's our goal is to create awesome human beings that go out in the world and bring the juice to everybody else.
I love that. I love that. Now, um, if you want, go ahead and I know you stated it earlier, but what's your web address and how can somebody get a hold of you if they have questions about this? And can they ask you questions about your fundraising process? Because that's a massive issue in our community.
Yeah, no, I've actually had a program in Montana that some people that I knew growing up started a baseball program, and they're like, "Hey, could we be a part of Valor?" And I was like, "Why don't you just be your own thing, and I'll just, get your guys' board together, call me, let's sit down, and I'm gonna walk you through our fundraising. I'm gonna give you step by step what we do, and you guys can, just have the structure." I was like, we're not in the same place, so we're not in competition for, funds. You guys are hundreds of miles away. Like I'm not too worried about my kids knowing anybody from Butte, Montana, and so they actually had a big goal of setting, a 5-year goal to have their own indoor facility. And they actually said after the first year that they thought they could, you know, have an indoor facility for the next year. So that brought them well ahead. But uh, on my website, I have a contact me page. It's sixtoolapparel.com. And, so people can email me through there. If they have interest in like mental training or just like motivational speaking, like we do that. I can bring in again, like guys like Austin Byler and, a fun group of guys. Then we love to go around and just kind of help, people however, and I'm always open to helping. Like I don't have any secrets, as far as what I'm trying to do. Like, my biggest goal is impact. And if that means I can help other coaches or communities create an impact, I'm all for it, and so I have no problem sharing any of our secrets or, doing anything to help anybody. So I, definitely open to questions. And that's a great way to get a hold of me is on there because it'll send an email to me. And then, from there, I have no problem giving people my phone number or whatever if they want to reach out or whatever, have a conversation on the phone. I'm always around, always available to help. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much, for your time today, Coach. And this has been another fantastic episode of Inside the Dugout with Coach Todd Cabrera. He goes by sometimes Coach Todd, sometimes Coach Cabrera, and his wife calls him whatever she wants, probably.
yeah, yeah, that's no. Well, I really appreciate it, man.
All right. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.